Session, April 23rd, 2019. Items for review and discussion. A, we have orientation for City Council. Who do you want to do with this?
Mr. Mayor, I'll do an introduction, as is standard to do after you've had an election and you have newly appointed and elected council members. We've asked our city attorney to prepare an orientation and just some refresher information for the rest of the council and yourself. And with that, Patrick Corcoran here has prepared some information. And Patrick, if you'll take it away.
Thank you very much, Mayor, City Council Member, City Manager. Thank you for allowing me to bore you guys tonight with all of this wonderful information. Thank you, Councilmember Peak, for keeping the egg timer up so I stay on track. As Alexa said, and as most of you know, my name is Patrick Corcoran, and yes, I actually did spell that correctly on that slide. The things we're going to go over today first is the charter of the City of Belton, Missouri. We're going to kind of first touch on the general authority of charter cities, and then we're going to go into the actual charter of the City of Belton, discuss the authorities, the roles and responsibilities that it designates for the City Council, the Mayor, and the City Manager, as those are kind of the three branches that are established by the charter that provide the day-to-day governance and policy making of the city. Then we'll get into Missouri Open Meetings and Records Law, most commonly referred to as the Sunshine Law. Then we'll discuss conflicts of interest and nepotism. And then as a palate cleanser, we'll talk about economic development incentives, since those are things people actually want to discuss. So first we'll hit on charter cities. As some of you may know, because some of you were actually on the Board of Aldermen of the city, the typical Missouri city is in the numerical classification system. What that means is now you're either a third class or a fourth class city. However, the Missouri Constitution specifically allows for cities to adopt and amend a charter that will serve their best interests. Now, the only qualification is that you have to be over 5,000 people, you have to set up a charter commission, and it has to be approved by the voters. This broad grant generally allows cities to adopt whatever type of government they see fit. If you look at it, to be honest, you could have a town hall style government under the charter form, where everybody comes in and votes on everything every single day. Luckily, you guys did not choose that form. Instead, you guys have chose this kind of three-branch form. Now, the authority granted to charter cities is incredibly broad. The Article 6, Section 19A says that any city that adopts a charter has the same powers as the General Assembly has the authority to confer on cities, as long as those powers are not inconsistent with state law, meaning the Constitution and statutes, or the charter itself. So whenever we're looking at adopting an ordinance or anything, we start off with looking at the charter to see if we have the authority to do it, and then looking at the Constitution and state laws to see if our ordinance prohibits what state law permits or permits what state law prohibits. That's the only time we're in conflict and that we really have to do a deeper analysis. Now, in third and fourth class cities, they operate under what's called Dillon's Rule, meaning that they have to have express authorization from the state to do anything. So luckily here we have a little bit more authority. And the main and the most powerful grant is in Article 6, Section 22, that says that the General Assembly cannot create or fix the powers, duties, or compensation of any municipal officer or employment. So this, the General Assembly could never pass a statute and say, City of Belton, you have to have a different form. You can't have a city manager, you need to have something else. They cannot do that. Now we'll get into the actual charter of the City of Belton. These are our three main sections, and as I've stated, these are our three main, what I would like to think of as branches of government. You have the City Council, which its duties and obligations and responsibilities are outlined in Article 3, and the way the charter reads, it essentially sets up the City Council as the legislative body for the city. The next one is the Mayor under Article 4. The Mayor plays essentially two roles under the charter. The Mayor is a member of the legislative body, but then the charter also grants him certain executive authority, appointment and veto authority mainly. And then Article 5 sets up the city manager, which expressly states that the city manager is the chief executive. So the city manager is essentially also the executive and has the administrative role like you see in, the United States government with the EPA and stuff like that. So first, we'll get into Article 3 with the City Council. The City Council actually has the broadest grant of authority, except as this charter provides, all powers of the city shall be vested in the City Council. Unfortunately, the charter provides otherwise a lot. So that general grant is limited by the charter as we go through these other sections. Now, the main thing that the City Council will do as the legislative authority is have legislative proceedings. Now, what does that mean? That means our meetings. The charter says you have one meeting a month or more. We do 2 a month. And then it kind of discusses taking official action. And I wanted to specifically touch on this just because there's been some recent changes. And the charter says in section 3.11e that ordinances are to be read by title 2 times at an open city council meeting. Previously, this was interpreted to mean that you could not have a single meeting ordinance. However, not in conflict with the charter, but interpreting the charter more, is section 299C of the city code, which allows for ordinances to be read in a single meeting upon a motion approved by 2/3 of the city council present, but no less than 5. So this is actually a pretty nice way to discuss our conflict issue, because you can see here those two things, you might read them to be in conflict, but they are actually not. The charter says you can have read by title 2 times at an open meeting, and then the Code of Ordinances doesn't permit or prohibit what that section permits or prohibits, and instead adds on and shows you the regulation that can further interpret that section. And then, as always, the most important thing of any legislative body is voting. The charter says that all votes are by voice vote except for final ordinances, which are by roll call. And then, while these are the 2 main grants, the City Council also does have additional authority to do investigations and independent audits. But again, as the legislative authority, the City Council is kind of confined to the legislative branch. Next, we'll get into Article 4 with the mayor. And this is a big block of words for everybody to read. You're welcome. But mainly what it does is it says that the mayor, as an additional office, but also as a voting member of the council, acts in the legislative capacity as a member of the council, but then is also granted certain other authority. One of them is to preside at meetings of the council, essentially becoming the presiding officer, which Mayor Davis had to use a couple times to clear people out of the room previously. But the main grants that it takes the mayor out from just the legislative capacity into some executive role is the ability to appoint with the advice and consent of the city council. If everybody will remember, this is typically also true in the United States government with the appointment of Supreme Court justices. The President of the United States is allowed to appoint the Supreme Court justice upon the advice and consent of the Senate. Same process here. The mayor is allowed to appoint members to boards and commissions upon the advice and consent of the City Council. The mayor is allowed to present an annual state of the city message and assign, subject to the consent of the City Council, all agenda items to committees, and actually my favorite part of the charter, and perform other duties as specified by the City Council. So if you guys are ever feeling like it, you can make Mayor Davis do some more work if you wanted to. The other bit of executive authority the charter gives to the mayor is the ability to veto. Veto and appointment are 2 very clear executive authorities. The President of the United States, the governor, all have the power to appoint and veto. So the charter kind of followed through with that while making the mayor a member of the legislative body, also granting him some executive authority through appointment and veto power. Now we get to Article 5, City Manager. I'm going to apologize. This slide has an absolute ton of words because the charter spells out pretty clearly what the city manager is supposed to do, and it is quite a bit. So the first and initial grant is in section 5.2 that reads, the city manager shall be the chief executive officer of the city, responsible to the city council for the management of all city affairs placed in the manager's charge by or under this charter. Now that first clause is very clear. The city manager is the chief executive officer. Then it goes on to say, responsible to the city council for all affairs placed in the manager's charge by or under this charter. Now, what does that mean? Section 5.2 goes on to say, the city manager is allowed to appoint, suspend, or remove all city employees or appoint administrative officers. And this administrative officers term is going to come up a lot in the charter. Administrative officers essentially means non-elected officials, is what I would interpret it to mean under your city charter. There's no definition given, but that seems to be clear from the way it's phrased. Direct and supervise the administration of all departments. That means the city clerk, the law department, community development, the fire department, X, Y, and Z. Attend all city council meetings. And I tried to bold in just one quick phrase that if you looked at it, that you could know what that section was trying to say. Enforce all the laws and provisions of the charter and acts of the city council. Prepare an annual budget and capital program, which we all were lucky enough to sit through besides Councilmember Clark. Submit a complete report of finances and administrative activities of the city, again, furthering the idea that the city manager is the chief executive officer in control of the administrative side of the city by requiring an administrative activities report. Make such other reports to the city council as they may require. Fully advise the city council of the financial condition and future needs of the city. Again, this is kind of our planning. Make recommendations to the city council. Staff support services to the mayor and city council. Assist the city council in developing long-term goals. Encourage and provide staff support for regional and intergovernmental cooperation, promote partnerships, and perform such other duties as specified in this charter or may be required by the city council. It's a pretty exhaustive list of things and even is open-ended at the end and says anything else that we didn't talk about, yeah, she also has to do that as well. So this is kind of going to be a quick charter wrap-up. So if you guys ever have a question, you can typically go to just this slide. By being a charter city, the city of Belton has significant authority to craft a form of government that best fits its needs. It's clear from the charter that the form of government that was chosen by the Charter Commission and approved by the people is a form of government that provides for a legislative body, a mayor that acts in both a legislative and executive role, and then a city manager that acts as the chief executive and as an administrative role. So kind of our three branches. The city council is generally designated as the legislative body charged with making policy decisions. The city council determines what the city is going to be doing and setting long-term goals for the community. The mayor, while a voting member of the city council, is also granted authority outside of just that legislative capacity to appoint people and veto ordinances. And then the city manager is designated as the chief executive officer of the city and authorized to carry out the day-to-day management of the city. Okay, anybody have any questions about the charter? 13 minutes is pretty good. Now let's get to even more fun stuff. The Sunshine Law. I found that graphic online. I've never seen it before, so I had to include it. Who is subject to the Sunshine Law? We always put this in here to kind of show you the breadth of it, but just so you know, everybody, this is a public governmental body. You are subject to the Sunshine Law. But also committees, boards, and commissions, Planning Commission, Sales Tax Advisory Committees, X, Y, and Z, advisory committees, Sales Tax Advisory Committee, and quasi-governmental bodies, which are bodies that are typically created just to contract with public governmental bodies. I don't really think there's one applicable in this situation. What is subject to the Sunshine Law? Meetings, records, votes, actions, and deliberations of the public governmental bodies. That is a very broad statement, and that is furthered by the Sunshine Law directly stating that it is to be liberally construed for openness, and then the exceptions provided therein are to be narrowly construed to, again, further that open public records policy. So what is a public meeting? This is a public meeting. Any meeting of a public governmental body at which public business is discussed, decided, or public policy formulated, whether such meeting is conducted in person or by means of communication equipment. Now, it's very nice that the Missouri legislature decided to put means of communication equipment in there because they tried to keep pace with technology, but as we'll talk throughout this, the Sunshine Law is horribly outdated and does not fit with today's current standards of email and other communication. So what is our open meeting procedure? To have an open meeting, first and foremost, notice. We have to provide notice of the time, date, and place of the meeting, a tentative agenda, and again, keyword in there, tentative. You can change the agenda, but I would suggest typically against it, but you can still just remember that. The tentative agenda is to be posted in a place easily accessible to the public and designated for the purpose of giving notice. This is typically on like a cork board right outside City Hall. It's typically where most people post their notices. At least 24 hours in advance, exclusive of weekends and holidays. So to have an open meeting, we have to tell the public the time, date, and place of it, what we're going to talk about, post it in somewhere where people know where it's going to be and can access it, and have it posted at least 24 hours beforehand. News media. The news media has a special role here because, again, they typically attend a lot of city council meetings, so they can then broadcast what occurred here. It used to be in the paper, but now it's typically on Facebook. But news media is specifically granted the authority almost to tell the city clerk, hey, we want notice every time you guys are going to have a meeting 24 hours in advance. Exceptions, good cause of why the notice can't be done because it is impossible or impractical. When this exception is to be used, you always have to state what your good cause is. Again, this is something that I would typically always advise against because it really hasn't been litigated that much, so we don't have that good of guidance on what is good cause. So that is there in the Sunshine Law, but not something I would heavily lean into if I was a public governmental body. Techno meetings. I have tried to come up with a better phrase for this. I cannot do it. I've telecommunications meetings, those don't sound good, so right now I've just been calling it techno meetings. But the Sunshine Law, as we said, has kind of kept up with technology by saying that if a public body plans to meet by internet chat, which I don't think anybody's meeting by internet chat, internet message board, or other computer link, it shall post notice of the meeting on its website and shall notify the public how to access the meeting. I don't know how many people have ever used this provision. It's there. If we ever all need to meet via group chat, we can do it. Thanks, Missouri General Assembly. But the most important part of these, and something that has not kept track, is emails. We've all been on emails where there's a quorum of the city council. Luckily, the city manager does a very good job at trying to ensure that doesn't happen, but there are times where a constituent will email at least a quorum. If that occurs, that immediately turns into almost a public meeting right then and there. The Sunshine Law requires that if that were to occur, the city council member would have to immediately forward that to either their computer at City Hall, which I don't think any of you have computers at City Hall, or to the custodian, which would be the city clerk. Now, these really become issues if there's a quorum on an email chain and it goes on for a while, and there's discussion about what's going on. Did we all of a sudden just have a public meeting but not post notice of it? Just through some internal discussions on, hey, what's going on? So again, quorum of the city council on an email, be aware that that can very quickly turn into a public meeting that wasn't properly noticed. Voting. When we're voting in open, all votes are to be recorded in the minutes. That's what the city clerk helps us with. And subscribed in yay or nay or absent to the members when doing roll call voting. This section is another one that kind of shows that, that hasn't really kept, the Sunshine Law hasn't really kept track with current technology. But for roll call votes, which under your charter is any time you have to adopt an ordinance, the final reading of an ordinance, the elected member is required to be physically present in attendance or participating via video conferencing. This last part was just recently added because the question was always, can somebody vote via telephone? And the Sunshine Law didn't really track with that and seemed to lean towards no. But for public governmental bodies that are smaller than the 9-member city council here, when there's only 5 and 2 people are absent and 1 person can do it, but they can only do it via phone because they're watching their kids at home, they would never be able to vote if it was a roll call vote. So luckily now we've kind of changed to allow video conferencing, but again, I still have never seen that used. And Councilmember Trutzel, we kind of talked about this. This is one of the exceptions of, this is one of the provisions of the Sunshine Law that does not apply to the Missouri General Assembly. They get to write the laws so they can vote via telephone.
I'm actually on several advisory boards and commissions at the state level, and we utilize
You do?
video conferencing and voting quite often because of
The
they come
statewide
from all over the
nature.
state, right.
It can,
Meeting may only last an hour and a half, and it doesn't make sense to travel
yeah.
3 hours for an hour and a half meeting.
And that provision, this, or who are participating via video conferencing, is relatively new. It's within the past 3 to 4 years.
Correct.
So Chief Parsons, when he was doing those beforehand,
We had to actually travel to.
you have to, because you couldn't vote via telephone, because I guess the fear was there could be somebody holding a gun to Chief Parsons' head, making him vote the way they want him to. So that's how we got that. And then closed session votes, all votes in closed session have to be by roll call. The vote going in, the vote going out, anything that happens in closed session needs to be by roll call. And always remember, with closed meeting votes, some of those are actually closed for just a limited period of time. Specifically real estate. Real estate is closed until the contract's executed. Personnel is closed for 72 hours. Litigation is closed until the litigation is settled. And then we'll get into our closed meeting procedure, which is relatively important because there are certain times when the city council needs to discuss matters that need to be behind closed doors for at least a period of time. So the first requirement is the closed meeting should be on the agenda. On your guys' agenda tonight, I do believe that we have litigation and real estate. So we have let the public know that you will be going into a closed session to discuss those 2 things. That's what they can know for now. In the future, if the litigation is settled or if the real estate is closed, they can actually then gain the closed or request the closed session minutes so that they can review them. The motion to go into the closed meeting needs to be made and should reference applicable statutory subsections. The mayor is actually very, very good at this. Every time he does it, you'll hear him say legal causes of action, pursuant to section 610.021.1 of the revised statutes of Missouri. That is key because while we have it on the agenda, we also have to make those in the public that are at the meeting aware this is why we're going behind closed doors. There needs to be an affirmative vote of a majority of the quorum to go into closed session. I'm sure everybody is well aware of this. That's also done by roll call. Only roll call votes in closed session, as we discussed. Thus, if for some reason somebody had to participate in a closed session via telephone, they would not be able to vote on any matter. And then the city clerk keeps minutes of the closed session so that in the event that those deliberations, those votes do become public, somebody can request them and review them. And now we'll go into our permissible reasons to close meetings, records, and votes. First, here are the main 3. These are the 3 that everybody typically uses: legal actions, real estate, and hiring, firing, and discipline of particular employees. There are some cities that some public governmental bodies as well, that these 3 are always on every agenda, just in case they need to use them. I typically do not advise to do that. I think you should only have something saying that you're going to go into closed session when you're actually going to go into a closed session, but typically they fall under one of these 3. The other 2 ones that are used quite frequently are individually identifiable personnel records and then negotiated documents, which is the sealed bids and related documents. Those are used a lot of the times when we're maybe negotiating some economic development incentives that if it were to get out to the public prior to agreement, the whole deal could fall apart. So we'll close under negotiated contracts and real estate and legal causes of action and be able to talk about that behind closed doors. And then once that deal is finalized, once that real estate transaction is completed, the litigation settled and the document negotiated and signed, it becomes open. All right. Now we'll get into conflicts of interest and nepotism. Everybody needs to pay attention here because there will be quiz questions. I am going to mainly ask Councilmember Trutzel because I made him aware of this in the TDD meeting that I was going to be asking him questions, but let everybody get involved. So our sources of authority for conflicts of interest are the state statutes, specifically Chapter 105, Missouri Constitution for anti-nepotism, the city code, and then what we like to call the appearance of impropriety. This is what most people consider conflicts, stuff that is not a statutory conflict, but they think it is. You know, one of the common ones we see are if somebody owns rental properties around the city, anytime that project comes up that involves the building of rental properties, they'll say, got to recuse myself. There's no statutory reason for you to recuse yourself, but they just feel that the public could, start yelling, how is he able to vote on that? He owns rental property. This is new rental property. He's going to vote no just so he can make sure that he still keeps making money being able to rent his properties out. That is not a conflict of interest under the statute, but it is an appearance of impropriety that sometimes people would like to avoid. Enforcement of ethics laws, the main one is the Missouri Ethics Commission. If a citizen or an interested party or anyone can file something with the Missouri Ethics Commission claiming that a council member violated one of the provisions of Chapter 105. The state or city may enforce ethics laws. That rarely occurs. Typically, people leave it up to the Ethics Commission because that is what they do on a day-to-day basis. And then public opinion, which is that appearance of impropriety. All right, so first we'll get into our state statutes. The first kind of area of conflict of interest that the state statutes are concerned with is quid pro quo. That is doing something because somebody else is going to give you something. It's the most pure form of conflict of interest. And that is prohibited by section 105.452.1, subsection 1. Confidential information is the next one. This is when public officials and employees use or disclose confidential information to create a financial gain for themselves. So say a person knew about a real estate closing via being a city council member, and they went ahead and bought all the properties around it because they knew that this development was coming right there and that all that property is going to increase in value. And that's prohibited by two different sections. The third one is special monetary benefit, and this is public officials cannot act in a manner that provides a special monetary benefit to themselves, to their spouse, or to their dependent children. Special monetary benefit is defined, so it is a term of art. It is not just some kind of willy-nilly phrase, but it means materially affected in a substantially different manner or degree than the manner or degree in which the general public or class were affected by it. And we have an example on this that we'll go through that'll help kind of clear some of that up. And then we got just a couple more. Coercion and extortion. This is essentially city council member can't use their decision-making authority to try and get something out of somebody. And that's prohibited by that section. Transacting business with the city. Mayor and city council members cannot perform services for the city for additional compensation. There will be no likely conflict if it's less than 500 or does not total more than 5,000 in a given year and does not violate any other ethical rules. If the transaction is greater than those amounts, then it needs to be bid out. And those are the statutory sections that concern that. All right, now we're going to get to our examples. Council member Annie's husband has worked for the City Public Works Department since before she was elected. The City Council is considering next year's city budget, which includes a 3% raise for all Public Works employees, including Council member Annie's husband. Can Council member Annie participate in the decision? Council member Trutzel?
Yes.
That is correct. She can participate. And hey, you had it right, Council member. I'm trying to liven this up. I think everybody's fallen asleep. So you were very correct. Yes was the right answer. You had a 50-50 chance, but yes was the right answer. Does anybody know why she can participate? Why that's the case? Because it applies to everybody. It's not specifically designed to provide her husband with benefits. But can she participate in her husband's yearly performance evaluation? No, especially if this performance evaluation is tied to his bonus. And this isn't a situation that you guys would all run into, as we talked about the charter. The city council doesn't typically play a role like that. But in some smaller cities, city council members do sit on performance evaluations, and this is actually very
What
worthwhile.
wife does not evaluate their husband?
I know mine does, and sometimes I think I come up lacking, but we'll see. So the next one is Laura Lobbyists. These are great names that I came up with, I think so. Takes Alan Councilman to lunch where she pressures him to vote down an ordinance banning smoking in all public places. Laura pays for the lunch. Was it okay for Laura to buy Alan lunch? Yes, it was. Unless he promised his vote because of the lunch. Then that's quid pro quo. You could go out to lunch with that person, and they could buy you lunch, and they could talk to you about, hey, this is why I want you to vote a certain way. But as long as that didn't actually factor into your decision, you're completely fine. But was it okay for Lauren to buy lunch? Yes, but remember, a lobbyist is required to provide this stuff to the state. So the public will know, if they want to, that Laura Lobbyist took Alan Councilman out to lunch right before the vote for smoking in all public places. Now, I talked through this next example with the city clerk. She did not get it, but I'm hoping that you guys do. And this is another example. What central event in this movie would have been a violation of sections 105, 452, 1, 2, and 3 if it involved Missouri state or local government information? You're close. It's the fact that he wants to get the orange crop reports at the very beginning, because he's getting confidential information to try and use to lower the frozen orange juice prices. It's Trading Places. It's a very good movie, guys.
Wow.
I would suggest watching it. Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. It's phenomenal. The characters are then brought into Coming to America, another great movie. But yeah, when Coming to America, when he hands $1,000 to the two homeless people, those are the two people from Trading Places that were trying to use confidential information. All right, our last one is nepotism. This is the most stringent rule because it does not come from statute, it comes from the Missouri Constitution. A council member cannot vote to appoint a person within the fourth degree of consanguinity or affinity, or else they automatically lose their city council position. It's not, oh, this could go on. No, you automatically forfeit it. Now, what relatives are covered? Blood, so that's your first cousin, great aunt and uncle, great nephew, niece, great-great-grandparents, and anybody closer to them. And then affinity is relatives by a single marriage. So then it is your spouse's first cousin, great aunt and uncle, X, Y, and Z. Now let's give an example of this. Susan was recently elected to the city council. Prior to her election, Susan's husband Fred was serving on the Planning and Zoning Commission. May Fred finish his term? Yes, there's nothing saying that he automatically needs to step down. Can the council reappoint Fred to the P&Z? Yes, they can. The key is, can Susan participate in the reappointment? No, she cannot. And this last point is actually something that comes up quite a lot. Typically you'll hear people be like, well, it was a 9-0 appointment. There's no even need for it. But it doesn't matter if you're not the deciding vote. It just matters if you vote. All right, and now our palate cleanser. We're done with all the bad stuff. Shake it off. Don't forget it, but you can forget it for now. So now we're into incentives. Now I classify incentives into three kind of things. Tax abatement, which is our Chapter 353 and our Chapter 100s. New taxes and assessment, which are our neighborhood improvement districts, our transportation development districts, and our community improvement districts. And then the capture/redirection of increased taxes, which are our sales tax reimbursement agreements. Some cities call them tax contribution agreements. Some cities just call them development agreements. And then tax increment financing. Now, before we get into the actual programs, sometimes it is beneficial to go over why we provide incentives. Cities aren't just providing incentives to people because they feel like providing incentives to people. We provide them in a lot of cases to remove blighted conditions. That's our Chapter 353s, our TIFs, and sometimes our community improvement districts. Sometimes it's to fill a financing gap. Typically when a developer comes in looking for incentives, the first thing they have to provide is a pro forma that shows what all their costs are so that city staff and city legal counsel and the city's municipal finance person can come in and actually look to figure out, okay, the reason why this project doesn't work is because they're spending $2 million on public improvements, and that means that they can't make any money. We can fill that gap for those public improvements with our economic development incentive tools. Level the playing field. A lot of times you'll see this with local companies compared to national companies. Sometimes Walmart is the big player on the block when it comes to retail. So it's very hard for your local retail to survive when there's a Walmart down the street. So some cities provide incentives to their downtowns or to their older corridors to have their more smaller shops so that those can still compete with the Walmart. Infrastructure costs and benefit to a larger area. This was utilized quite a bit by Belton. A significant amount of public improvements and infrastructure was built using TIF. And then retain and expand existing businesses. This is the one that retention and expanding existing businesses is always a really good reason to use incentives in my mind, because if you're helping something grow that is already in your city and has already grown, so you're just continuing kind of the Belton economic development, the Belton growth locally. So first one, we'll get into Chapter 353. Chapter 353 is the oldest economic development tool. It dates back to the 50s. This has been used widely across the state for a very long period of time. A lot of the buildings in downtown Kansas City, like the Commerce Tower building, that was a Chapter 353 when it was built. It was a Chapter 353 when it was remodeled as well. But to do a Chapter 353, we need an Urban Redevelopment Corporation, which is a redevelopment corporation that is just like any other not-for-profit and is established with the Secretary of State. We need a development plan. Unfortunately, Chapter 353 doesn't tell us what's even supposed to be in a development plan, but most people include our blight study, kind of what the abatement level is going to be, how is it blighted, tax impact analysis, and clawbacks, stuff like that. Before we can do adopt our redevelopment plan, we have to provide a cost-benefit analysis or a tax impact analysis to the taxing jurisdictions. And Chapter 353 abates real property taxes. So again, you're not going to use Chapter 353 in every situation, but say somebody comes in and they're just a manufacturer and they want to go into a blighted area, you could use Chapter 353 to capture the property taxes. You wouldn't use something like TIF because TIF also captures retail sales. So that doesn't make sense when somebody's only going to produce property taxes. And then cities can require payments in lieu of taxes. Now, it's important to remember, under TIF, payment in lieu of taxes is one of the revenue streams. Under Chapter 353, a payment in lieu of taxes is actually the developer paying the taxing jurisdiction's money that they get to keep. Our next one, which is also predominantly property tax, is Chapter 100. Chapter 100 is very broad. It can be used for industrial, office, and commercial. It does not have to be used in a blighted area. There is no blight designation necessary. Before doing a Chapter 100 plan, you have to provide a plan for industrial development and cost-benefit analysis to the county, the city, the school district, and any emergency services district affected by the plan. Just like in Chapter 353, you can require payments in lieu of taxes from the developer. Under Chapter 100, the city is essentially used as a conduit to issue bonds to be used to pay for the cost of building the project. And the property owner or the developer receives tax abatement because the city owns the property during the time where the bonds are out. And so during that time, since the city owns the property, it's not subject to property taxes. And additionally, it provides a sales tax exemption, if the city decides to give it, for construction materials used in building the project. NIDs, these were incredibly popular previously. It's a special benefit improvement district, typically done for public facilities and improvements. They were used a lot to do a lot of neighborhoods in the mid-2000s. They've kind of gone the way of the dinosaur, just like the Chapter 353 has. But it requires that 2/3 of the property owners petition the city council for the designation, and the NID will levy special assessments against the property within its boundaries to repay the NID bonds issued to fund the public facilities and improvements. Transportation development districts, there are, I do believe, 3 operating in the city right now. Carolyn, am I correct? Is there 3 TDDs? So TDDs, just like NIDs, are special improvement benefit districts. They can be established by the property owners, the voters, or the local transportation authority, or 2 local transportation authorities joining together to file a petition in the circuit court. Now, TDDs are different than everything else because most of these just come to the city council for approval. A TDD, we actually have to go to the circuit court and have it approved there. It is a separate political subdivision. It can only be used for transportation purposes only, and it actually has the authority to impose a sales tax and levy a real property tax and levy a special assessment. Again, transportation development districts were very, very popular and still are popular for some purposes, but due to that limitation that they can only be for transportation and the fact you have to go to the circuit court to approve them, they're kind of starting to fall away and be consumed by the community improvement district, the CID. CIDs, just like TDDs and NIDs, are special improvement districts. They're established by a petition of more than 50% of the property owners by number and per assessed value to the city council. It is a separate political subdivision, or it can be a not-for-profit. An example of a not-for-profit community improvement district is actually the downtown Kansas City Community Improvement District. If you're ever in downtown Kansas City, you'll see the guys in the yellow shirts with the trash cans sweeping stuff up. That is the downtown community improvement district, and they are a not-for-profit that levies a special assessment to provide those services. This next point is why you're seeing CIDs used more than TDDs and NIDs. It has a broad scope of improvement services within the CID boundaries. It is not constrained just to transportation. It is not constrained just to public facilities and improvements. It can do a lot of different activities, which is why you see CIDs used as both a development tool and essentially as a tool to beautify the city. We're not even development focused. You'll see a CID added to a TIF to help encourage development, or like the downtown Kansas City CID, you'll see a CID established just to help clean up the area, not to provide any money to a developer or anything, but just truly to help beautify an area. And just like a TDD, a CID can impose a sales tax and levy a real property tax or special assessments. Sales tax reimbursement agreements. These are used frequently on kind of our small dollar projects. This is simply just an agreement between the city and the developer, which a portion of the sales taxes produced by the development are used to reimburse the developer for public infrastructure improvements and other public purposes. One of the ways you'll see a sales tax reimbursement agreement is sometimes coupled with a Chapter 100. So say the example I can use, because I've worked on it, was a Dollar Tree came into a rural community. It had a pretty significant financing gap. So Chapter 100 was used to provide real property tax abatement for 10 years, and then a sales tax exemption for construction materials, and then the city layered a sales tax reimbursement agreement on top of it that captured some of the general city sales tax and some of the capital improvement sales tax to fund parking lot improvements, landscape improvements, and make the building. If you see Dollar Trees, a lot of times they have steel sides. They don't look great. In this case, as a way to up the development, the sales tax reimbursement was given so that there was actually masonry walls instead of just those kind of plain sidings. And then next is tax increment financing. This is the dirty word, TIF. TIF is for the redevelopment of blighted areas. This is what it's typically used for. It can also be used for conservation areas or economic development areas. Most everybody just confines it to blight. To do a TIF, obviously, I think everybody here has been involved in one. There's a redevelopment plan with a cost-benefit analysis. You can group different projects within one plan. So say we have XYZ TIF plan, and then we have 5 redevelopment projects within it, which each one is activated, and that is when the 23 years are triggered. Significant amount of project costs are eligible for funding under this. The one interesting thing about TIF that statutorily the other programs do have is the but-for test. It has to be established that but for TIF, this redevelopment project would not, or this development project would not occur. And to approve a TIF plan, first it goes before the TIF Commission, which is made up of 6 city representatives appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the city council, 2 county officials, 2 school district officials, and then 1 other official representing all the other taxing districts that might be involved in the project. So your fire districts, your emergency services, or your ambulance districts, your library districts, your community college districts, kind of those ones. TIF a little bit more continued. What TIF does is it captures 100% of the increment. Remember, there's a base year, so the current taxes that are on the property stay, but the city gets 100%, or the developer gets to capture 100% of the increase in real property for 23 years, and then 50% of the increased sales tax for 23 years. We have to include a relocation of existing businesses provision. And this last point is one that is, it's very important for cities and for counties and for all of these, but new taxes that are imposed after August 28th, 2014 are not eligible for TIF unless the governing body agrees that they can be captured under TIF. So for example, you all passed a half-cent general city sales tax this past year. If a new TIF were to come into the city, that half cent, unless you all approved it, would not be captured. And then there are conflict of interest provisions required in all TIFs and in all TIF commissions. That's it. 46 minutes. I went over by 16. My goal was 30. Does anybody have any questions? I kind of steamrolled that, but
Well, real quick, I wrote down one question. Which issues, we were talking about all the incentives and all. In particular, right now, I've been following all the legislation with TDDs, with TIFs, with the current legislation and TDDs. I know Nicole Galloway is really,
and CIDs as well. She has audited CIDs and TDDs both. She has proposed changes that, you know, if they take place, we'll follow them. But I haven't seen the General Assembly kind of pick those up yet.
my big thing was always that if it was an even playing field, that's a good thing. Meaning it was the same for everybody. Councilman Clark.
Do we, I know Ron one time was in chapter 100, I think. Do we have any 100 or 353s on the book still?
Chapter 100s, yes. 353, is that still with the Odessa auto auction or?
Odessa was a 353. ROM is still a Chapter 100, and we use Chapter 100 for Southview Commerce Center.
And Chapter 100 bonds are a very good economic development tool. I mean, they're very easy to get passed. They provide both upfront funding to the developer and tax abatement at the same time, and a sales tax exemption. So, I mean, they are very popular. There are a lot of cities that use them for a, you know, broad variety. I've been involved in Chapter 100 plans for a Dollar Tree, for a 300-unit mixed-use apartment building, for a car dealership. I mean, you name it, I've seen Chapter 100 used for it.
Questions? Councilman Van Winkle.
Carolyn, didn't we use the 100 for the Fairfield as well?
Yes, we did do that too for construction materials.
Okay, thanks.
And that is something else that's very common with Chapter 100 is that the property tax abatement might only be for 3 years, but that sales tax exemption, that is a very significant funding tool. In some cases, it's easily, for like a $5 million project, can easily be $150,000.
And for them to take advantage of that, they have to use our Belton businesses as well, correct?
No, because they simply receive, you can require that by the development agreement, but under state law, they just receive the city's sales tax exemption. So when the city buys something, they have a sales tax exemption that they use.
Okay.
That is given to them. So they could, if you didn't require it in the development agreement, they could use it wherever they wanted to. And it actually, sometimes under that situation, it's actually better for the city because then somebody else's sales taxes are what is being exempted, not the city's.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a big advantage to that in that case. That scenario, the Fairfield Inn uses Home Depot for all their construction. Is that right? Almost all of it? A lot of it, yes. And so they save a lot of money on fuel, just bringing stuff in back and forth in their construction work. So it's another viable resource. Somebody else, thought I saw somebody else. Do you have anything else on this?
Not on this topic, Mayor.
So I guess you can come over and sit down with us, with the big people here. And good job, Patrick, we appreciate it. All right, with that, I'd like to call the work session
Nope, we have
to
one more
be
item
on Y
continued.
Highway. Market. Oh, yeah, jumped the gun a little quick again, didn't we, huh? Okay.
So the
So
next,
who's gonna talk about the Y Highway TIF Marketplace TIF Amendment?
Carolyn and I will be addressing that this evening, Mr. Mayor. In front of you tonight, we have some additional information about the Y Highway Marketplace TIF Amendment. As you know, the Y Highway Marketplace is the new Price Chopper location. The developer for that area is Costantino's, and they have a letter of interest for a parcel of property that's to the east of the Taco Bueno, and would like to talk to the council this evening about the possibility of amending that TIF agreement. Carolyn, do we have them here?
My apologies. I did not see this on here. They wanted to wait until it was actually under contract with a contingency.
Okay.
So my apologies, we should have pulled this item.
Okay, that's okay. Well, we'll have more information on this at a future meeting. So, Mr. Mayor, you were spot on. That does conclude our work session.
Well, that makes up for the time that Patrick took, and I appreciate that. No.
I would like to make up for that with, I did buy cookies for city council because of the patience for Patrick. So I hope that makes up for my error.
Wow, that's deep. We're going to adjourn the work session, and at this time, we'd like to call, I got to look back up here and see what the date is.
For 2030.
Okay, drag it up there. Call to order the regular city council meeting, April 23rd, 2019. So with that, we'd like to have Councilman Trutzel lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pardon me.
Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Davis,
Here?
Councilman Savage,
Here.
Councilman Lathrop,
Here.
Councilman Trutzel,
Here.
Councilman Van Winkle,
Here.
Councilman Clark,
Here.
Councilman Finn,
Here.
Councilwoman Davidson. Here. Councilwoman Peak. Here.
Consent agenda, one motion non-debatable to approve the recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action. Before we do this, let me see here. City Manager, do you want to pull which one?
Item C.
Item C, we're going to pull that for a different time.
Yes, we're looking into this situation on this vehicle. With the extensive amount of snow that we pushed this year, I've asked Public Works to go back and take a look at the vehicle to ensure that instead of a parts vehicle, do we need a vehicle to push snow instead? And where does that priority lie? So I've asked them to go back and look at that before we bring it to you. And so that will come back to you at a later date.
So we've pulled C. Okay,
I have a couple,
okay.
E and F.
E and F. So we've got C, E,
Well,
and
C's,
F.
right.
We're going to discuss E and F, though.
Okay.
Okay,
You said F?
yes.
Okay. E, it didn't have a rate of what we were doing.
We'll
Okay,
wait,
Let's have a motion first,
right,
please.
motion first. I'd entertain a motion.
Present.
And a second. Motion and second. Any discussion? We've pulled the E and F and see it another time. No discussion, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. All right, we'll revisit E at this time. Okay, and
Okay,
E,
on,
let's look at that real quick. That's about, why don't you read what E is, please? That is motion approving Resolution R 2019-36.
A resolution of the City of Belton, Missouri approving the renewal of a contract with Earthworks Excavation and Associates LLC for a term of 1 year with the option of up to 1 additional year renewal for demolition of dangerous residential structures services on an as-needed basis.
my
Hey,
question, my
yes.
question was, it didn't have a rate of the contract.
Right, the rate is the same. They didn't raise any of the rates from the last one. I can get you a copy from this last contract that we're basically extending. And this is the company that we use to abate dangerous buildings.
Well, I didn't have a question with it, but it didn't have a rate. It just said the same one, and I couldn't remember what that was.
Right, the different services are rated at different amounts. Where we've talked about it can, when it all tolls up at the end, it can range anywhere from 10,000 to 25,000 to take down a building. But I am happy to provide that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that one? So we want to keep this in limbo, or we want to entertain a motion to accept this one?
Well, I'll make a motion to accept it.
Okay,
Second.
motion and second, any discussion?
Who was second, please? Thank you.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. F, a motion approving Resolution R 2019-37.
A resolution of the City of Belton, Missouri authorizing and approving the service agreement between the Institute for Building Technology and Safety and the City of Belton, Missouri for a term of 2 years and the automatic renewal and extension of an additional 2 years until either jurisdiction terminates the service agreement with a 90-day written notice of termination in advance of the expiration.
Okay, let's hear some discussion.
Okay. I had a question on the hourly rate. They're reviewing the contracts for residential and commercial. And on the residential, they'll review the contracts for $100 an hour. But when they get on commercial, it's $135. You're still sitting there reviewing the same thing. Why is he $35 more?
I'm going to defer to Dave Clemens to be able to address this item.
Well, a commercial review is much more extensive. You have to look at fire safety, you look at plumbing, electrical. There's just much more detail involved in a commercial review than in a residential review.
Well, my answer on that is it's so much per hour. It takes more hours.
Basically, it's a harder hour to do commercial than it is to do
Yeah.
residential.
No, say that again?
Use the
Harder
microphone.
to do a commercial hour than it is a residential hour, so he wants more money.
More knowledge is required to do that.
Hard to do it.
The qualification to do it is higher.
But it's the same person, right?
I don't know that.
Okay. It just blew my mind when we had an hourly rate for somebody reviewing the thing to go from one to the other. So, anyway.
Okay,
Mayor?
sir.
I had a couple questions on this. I'm assuming this is, because I think it says something about we lost an employee on April 12th. So is this just filling in until we hire someone different? Or is this overruns, or is this like an ongoing thing for the next 2 years? Because I saw an exclusivity on it too.
Okay, yes.
To all?
So, yes, so we are in desperate need for it right immediately. Jim Brown, our building official, left us on April 12th was his last date. And so we are in need of those services to be able to provide this review and look at the plans. As you know, we have a lot of construction that's happening in the city, and we want to be able to have this in place. We're fortunate enough Mid-America Regional Council had put this into place, had already done a cooperative purchasing process on this so that we can use it. And we want to have it in place so that we're not extending the time for review. We will have a service in place. Having said that, because once we get somebody in, we realize there's going to be a learning curve with the city. Yes, a building official, we hope will have all of the extensive knowledge and be certified in their field. However, coming in and learning the projects that we've got going on in Belton, there is that curve there. So we want to be able to extend that out if needed. And so that's that caveat on an as-needed basis. And with the number of projects that we have coming up, if it's needed for, possibly our building official would review a certain number of plans. If we have additional projects that come in, and if they're not able to meet some of that timeline criteria, as we're trying to turn those around, we want to be able to have a service in place to be able to do that. Our first criteria, Plan A, is always to use in-house.
Will this person be on site, like here in our building?
They don't have to be, because the review of these plans can be at their location. So what we're hoping is to reduce those costs of any type of travel time or things like
I'll
that.
just say there's a special cost for inspections and all that other stuff. So I guess my question is, having someone that's not on site or not in the city of Belton, how is this going to delay the process that we already have?
Say that to me one more time.
Is this going to delay the process for getting plans reviewed and
No.
inspections done and stuff like that?
We hope not. That's why we want to have this in place, because right now, without a building official, yes, it will delay it.
More questions, comments?
Move to approve.
Second. Motion is second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Okay. Going down the hill here. No personal appearances, ordinances.
have-
Oh, personal appearance on proclamation. Councilwoman Davidson, will you come up forward, please, for a proclamation of Arbor Day? And would our famous park person come up, please, at this time? Mr. Feedback? You can pull that around.
Ready?
Excuse me, Carolyn, would somebody? Thank you.
Ready now? Good. Whereas in 1892, J. Sterling Morton first proposed that a special commemorative day be officially set aside for the planting of and the acknowledgement of trees, and whereas this holiday, designated as Arbor Day, is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil and wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas the trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of our business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas on April 26, 2019, the City of Belton will celebrate Arbor Day and pay special attention to the wonderful treasure that our trees represent and dedicate themselves to the continued health of our state's urban and rural forests. Now therefore, be it resolved by the City of Belton, Missouri, I hereby proclaim April 26, 2019 to be Arbor Day and the month of April 2019 to be Arbor Month in the City of Belton, and I urge all citizens to become more aware of the importance of trees to their well-being, to participate in the tree planting programs that will ensure a green Belton for decades to come, and to plant, nurture, protect, and wisely use Belton's great treasures of trees. In witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand to be affixed hereto the seal of the City of Belton this 23rd day of April 2019.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Congratulations.
And Kevin, we kind of consider him a rock star in the park. He is an arborist, which means what, Kevin? You can tell me any tree I show you, you know the leaves. Oh. Sure. How many trees do you?
I can't tell you, I'll find out for you.
Okay, but how many trees do we have out to the park that in our nursery?
Around 2,000.
2,000 trees that we'll utilize throughout the city.
Yes.
It's incredible.
In Memorial Park.
How about the floral stuff on Main Street? You guys do all this, the roundabouts now?
Yeah, we're getting ready to redo everything, so.
Can I have some say about, no. I was talking about what kind of flowers I want in my roundabout. Just kidding. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's true. That's really true. So
Something
we think
durable
you're doing
then.
a great job. Kevin does a great job. He was out, city manager, at your Oil Creek cleanup that we had. And, yeah, but you helped supervise and got it all organized and told me to stay out of the water.
Yeah, you've done,
So-
Kevin's been involved in that every year since it's come to Belton, and he's done a phenomenal job with that and has helped organize and arrange that. You were truly missed that day, I will tell you that. We all looked at each other and said, what are we going to do with all this trash? It
was quite a pile.
But it was a great event, and thank you for all your hard work on that.
Thanks so much. And if you don't want to stick around, you feel free to take your proclamation and go away. All right? Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Okay, we're on to ordinances here. A motion approving both readings of bill number 2019-24.
An ordinance approving the Avid Hotel Belton, a tract of land located in the southeast quarter of Section 12, Township 46 North, Range 33 West, in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman Clark.
I don't know, did I read something that we were taking this out of a TIF? Was this in a TIF? Okay, must have just mixed up the other one as far as a TIF adjustment or
I
something
think
like
you're
that.
probably thinking of a TIF when you were on the council 100 years ago. Maybe.
Well, that land back then, we didn't have the road to nowhere when I was on the council the first time, so,
Yeah, there's no TIF involved in anywhere in that area other than Menards and across that one lot across the street. All that is non-TIFed up the hill.
Yep.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
For second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. A motion approving the second reading of bill number 2019-24.
An ordinance approving the Avid Hotel Belton, a tract of land located in the southeast quarter of Section 12, Township 46 North, Range 33 West, in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none.
Councilman Lathrop,
Aye.
Councilman Finn,
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak. Aye. Councilman Savage,
Aye.
Councilman Trutzel,
Aye.
Councilwoman Davidson,
Aye.
Councilman Clark,
aye.
Councilman Van Winkle,
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. That motion passes.
Move
B,
for
a
second
motion
reading.
approving both readings of bill number 2019-25.
An ordinance amending Chapter 14 nuisances, Section 14-5, subsection D, right of entry for purposes of enforcement of the Belton Code of Ordinances as it relates to the execution of administrative warrants for the abatement of nuisances.
Present.
Motion and second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Move for second reading.
A motion and a second for second reading. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. B, a motion approving the second reading of bill number 2019-25.
An ordinance amending Chapter 14 nuisances, Section 14-5, subsection D, right of entry for purposes of enforcement of the Belton Code of Ordinances as it relates to the execution of administrative warrants for the abatement of nuisances.
Present.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Seeing none.
Mayor Davis,
Aye.
Councilwoman Davidson,
Aye.
Councilman Clark,
Aye.
Councilman Finn,
Aye.
Councilman Trutzel,
Aye.
Councilman Lathrop,
Aye.
Councilman Savage,
Aye.
Councilman Van Winkle,
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak.
That motion passes. Moving on, we have no resolutions. City Council liaison reports. Park, please. Councilwoman Davidson.
The Easter egg hunt was this past Saturday. It was pretty well attended. There were 15,000 eggs, I believe, spread out on 3 ball fields. It was pretty impressive. And then they have a couple of events coming up that I'll read here. There are just a few spots left for our next paint party on Wednesday, May 1st from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at Memorial Station. Don't miss the opportunity to create and take home your very own April Showers Bring May Flowers masterpiece. Just like the image below, which you can find on their Facebook page. Paint, brushes, easels, canvases, snacks, and instructions are provided, and they will leave the fun to you. Cost is $25. Just stop by the front desk at High Blue to register. And if you're interested, they still have a few open spots in recreation baseball for boys, 5th and 6th grades. If you're interested, you can contact Kevin at High Blue Wellness. Plans are being finalized for this year's Summerfest, and we promise you're not going to want to miss this full day of fun. Saturday, June 15th from 2 to 10 p.m. Just take note, it's only one day this year. It's that Saturday. There will be live music from Cheap Thrills, games and inflatables, food trucks, a beer garden, wiffle ball tournament, fireworks, and more. We should have a wiffle ball team.
What day was that?
I'm down.
All right.
Stephanie, what day was that?
June 15th, Saturday.
Never hit a
I'll be the
fastball day.
cheerleader.
It's the curveball.
Because I couldn't hit the ball.
You hit the fastball?
I can hit a fastball.
You hit the fastball.
Let's see here. Inside and outside Memorial Station, there will be several local craft vendors, lots of great shopping opportunities, and the first 200 people can receive a voucher for a $2 admission to the outdoor water park during Summerfest. The water park will stay open that day until 9 p.m. Remember to bring a lawn chair or blanket to enjoy the concert and fireworks, but no coolers, please. This is my favorite one to read. We'll have the kids and adults alike bouncing off the walls. A lot of walls when Big Bounce America comes to Wallace Park on Friday through Sunday, May 17th through 19th. It's the only stop in the KC Metro, so you don't want to miss. Sign up now for one of the available spots. Escape adulthood at the biggest, craziest, and most awesome inflatable theme park to ever exist. You're invited to quality time with friends in an action-packed wonderland of inflatable adventure. Challenge yourself on America's biggest inflatable obstacle course, relive your childhood on the world's biggest bounce house, or chill out in the ball pits of our weird and wonderful airspace. Your all-access ticket entitles you to 3 hours of fun on 3 completely unique attractions for one fun price. And then my other favorite, join us for an Under the Sea Princess Party with Ariel on Saturday, June 1st from 2 to 4 p.m. at High Blue. It's for 3 to 8-year-olds. There will be princess crafts, princess treats, princess parade, and a visit from Ariel and more. Cost is $15, and princess attire is welcome. And then also one update that came from the meeting last week, with the flooding that has happened up north, there were some ball teams, I believe, in Parkville that didn't have ball fields to play. So they have actually partnered with our Belton Parks and Rec to get them taken care of and provide facilities where they can play.
Outstanding.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Anything for Public Works? Have you had a meeting there? Anything? I think we'll move on to Mayor's Communication. I could have you do yours under a liaison, Councilwoman Peak, but I think we'll do it under Mayor's Communication.
Okay.
Let's do yours first about Belton Cares.
Belton
Let's do
Cares.
that one.
They're currently accepting cash check donations for the Belton Aftergrad 2019 party. This year the party is Thursday, starts Thursday, May 9th at 11 p.m. and will end at 4 a.m. on the morning of May 10th, Friday. Help make the seniors party a success with the donation. Any amount is accepted. Personal or business donation of 100 or more that is received by April 30th includes your name or business name on the back of the senior t-shirts. If any council or staff would like to make a donation, I'm happy to accept your donation this evening, or you can mail a check payable to Belton Cares at 110 West Walnut, Belton. That's coming up, so.
I delivered my check this morning, and I think Councilman Clark, didn't you say you've already donated too?
I told Sandy that she was supposed to stop by.
That
and pick
doesn't
one up.
count unless it's delivered.
I didn't know I could deliver it tonight.
It's a good thing, and it's good on the back. Chief, you're always part of that, so
My check's been in.
for a long time. Okay. How many years of has this gone on now?
I think this is '89 was the first, so this will be the 30th.
Yeah.
Wow.
They didn't care about us when I was growing up.
Oh, I'm sure we did it when you were in.
We're
In my mind. So that's a good thing, Belton Cares. Another good thing that's going on is I see that we're doing donations still for the museum with the debacle with the bricks and all that around the museum and the theater. If you can, make donations to that too. That's a good cause also. Do you want to speak to that, Councilwoman Davidson, at all?
Yeah, if you visit our Facebook page for Belton Community Projects, BCPI, we actually have a link there where you can donate, and 100% of those proceeds go to the repairs that are needed. And right now we're up to $350 of our $1,000 goal.
Super. So again, good causes. We can all get into that. Okay, my last one tonight, we had a special one this last week. Councilman Lathrop brought to my attention, it was out on Facebook, and it's kind of blown up out there. It's a pretty good thing. On Saturday, the 20th of April, Councilman Lathrop and his wife Frances were at Cracker Barrel, and of course, they were doing just like everybody I know that's got a wife. She was shopping while they were waiting, so they had to wait quite a while. And turned up a bus load of kids out of McAllister, Oklahoma, which I've been real familiar with because of wrestling. They were like state champions forever in Oklahoma. And they arrived out front, all kinds of people. They waited, she shopped. And of course, all the young people were out, and so they're talking to all the young people that came over and said that the bus broke down, they're waiting to repair the bus. I think it was a fuel line, wasn't it? And so they took the kids to Worlds of Fun that day. Good they weren't there the next day when they had the big fight. But trouble was found. They drove 2 miles to Cracker Barrel, and they were invited to relax. They went behind the building. The manager on duty Saturday fed the whole group on the house, like over 50 people. And it's just incredible that, and he's a good guy, and we all know him pretty well. And we're really proud of the fact that they had this going within less than an hour, I guess it was, that they got it done, got them all taken care of. And like Councilman Lathrop said, these kids will always remember Cracker Barrel in Belton, Missouri, because of I mean, that's just good stuff. I mean, the hospitality. And so Councilman Lathrop did ask that he was a council member. He told him, and he asked them that they'd vote for him someday. And they all raised their hands and shouted yes. So they'll remember Belton. So I thought that was a great cause, and we're real appreciative, and we thank you. So we can move on to yours now, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you'll see, our next meeting coming up will be on May 14th. Wanted to talk a little bit about the stream cleanup. We did mention a little bit ago, it was rescheduled. We had a great turnout. It was really successful, and the Doris from the Grand River Watershed Alliance stated it was the largest cleanup they'd had in a community. And so that was a really good thing. And everyone started off early, stayed and through lunch. Thank the Lions Club for coming out and cooking hamburgers and hot dogs. There's some great photos, and if you haven't seen them, go out to the city's website and Facebook page and take a look at those. A lot of city employees out there volunteering their times. We also I wanted to run by the council tonight. If you've been into City Hall recently, you will have seen that we've hung up a lot of the former pictures from City Council. And it's been a long time since we've taken a picture of the City Council. And I wanted to know if there would be an interest by this council to schedule a future photograph. I'd like to probably ask somebody with a camera, 2A Marketing, somebody to come down and take a photo of the group. Would you be in favor of that?
Do I need to make a motion, Attorney? No. Well, we just went through it all, and now you're already
Can he
changing
use
the
his
rules.
veto power here?
Oh, are you, well, no, he can only veto ordinances. He can't
All
veto
right.
motions or
All
resolutions.
right, so can't do it.
Well, thumbs up, thumbs down. Everybody okay with the picture? And we'll make sure you get it.
of notice.
Well, she'll take care
Well-
of
He
that.
Photoshop.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll take a look at one of the dates in May, and we'll see what we can come up with. So either the 14th or the 28th. Probably the 14th, just because the 28th is the day after holiday.
Okay.
So,
Everybody will be sunburnt.
yeah.
Wow.
Just me.
With that, any other business this evening?
One more.
Councilman Clark?
Being new to this council, and you guys might have already discussed this before in the past, and I apologize, but I'm wondering, we have a sign ordinance in town, and I'm trying to figure out, do we charge them to put their signs on the corner of our streets? I'm starting to see all these signs like mowing jobs and, so they just like pop up on side streets and,
Those are snipe signs, and they're not allowed in the community. When we see them, we try to take them down. So if you see them and you want to take them down, that'd be really helpful to
well,
staff.
I just didn't know if we can pass an ordinance to fine them for doing that.
Is there a fine within our ordinances?
It would be
So
a
many?
violation.
Yeah.
We certainly could, but typically, if there's an inspector out, Mr. Clark, they'll just pick up the signs, we just put them in the back here, and somebody calls, says, where are my signs? You can come pick them up, but don't put them up again, so.
Well, I just wonder if we put a little teeth into the sign ordinance and maybe had $100 fine per sign, because there's a green one out there, I bet I see 50 of them.
Yeah, springtime they pop up.
All right.
They pop up.
I just think it's,
It's in an HOA though.
it's not my,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I mean, I get where, like, we had an Easter egg drop. I get those signs. I see when we have community days or St. Patrick's
Neighborhood
Day
watch,
parade. Yeah,
neighborhood,
I get all
garage
that,
sale, yeah.
but to see a for-profit business trying to advertise on our street corners, I think to do that, we either fine them or, personally, I just wanted to help clean up the streets.
I think it's a great job because a lot of our people, all these are on the weekends and our staff are gone, most of them. So you council people should probably do that and keep them and give them Dave on Monday and he can put them in the back room.
I didn't know if that was something we were
Dave,
legally
yeah.
allowed to touch or,
Different Dave, yeah,
Yeah, he's talking about that Dave, not this Dave.
yeah, that Dave.
Do they pick them up when they see them?
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yeah, when,
yeah, I've seen him do it.
The
Been
the
one on my
ordinance
highway
does
for 2
specify
weeks.
Okay.
different types of signs. There are event-type signs, like you said, the Easter egg that has certain times that they can have out. There's, garage sale signs. There are different things in that ordinance, so it's not just,
those signs
All
usually get
signs,
picked
so-
up though. It's just like I said, for-profit business minus the real estate people.
Oh,
But,
I know where to put the signs at.
But typically, they pay for their signs, so they're gonna pick them up when they're done, but
Well-
it just,
And we're not able to put them just anywhere either. We've got to put them on personal property, out of the right of way, and I have to have permission from the property owner to be able to place it there. And I also give them my contact information so they can contact me at any time, and I'll come get the sign from them. So it's not a problem. So that's how you properly do it. You don't just jab a sign in the corner and say, hey, this is how we do it. So if you do see the signs out that are in the right of way on the street corners, then are you asking for them to be picked up? Because that could be a
absolutely.
conflict of
I've
interest.
I actually picked one up myself one day at Quick Trip, saw it, picked it up, drug it away, just
It'd be
because.
best if you left it to us professionals.
Yeah, you can't, but typically our staff, when they go out and they see it, and if you see one, let us know.
yeah.
well, there's just the green one, I bet he has 50 of them out there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the sad part, is come springtime, they do that,
Do we check these people and make sure they have a business license?
nope.
Well, you're the one that brought up your colleagues' real estate stuff, so you guys can settle that in the back room. But, good example though.
How you handle business.
So we know what we're supposed to be doing, but we can pick those up and I'm not gonna pick them up because I don't wanna get shot. But,
Just got to do a drive-by.
sorry, Dave.
Yeah, we have identification city vehicles, we have authority to do that, it's probably best to.
Yeah. But it's a valid point, it really is, and it does get disgruntling. When I drive around the city a lot and stalk people, I do look at those kinds of things, that it does get over the top. And especially the ones that are like repetitious and,
Well, I think if they're not from our city, I mean, we got people coming out from outside of our city trying to generate business here that, they don't have business license, they don't know a lot about what's going on with these people. I don't think it's fair to the citizens, so.
I think it'd be good to do Burma shaves again, and that really dates me. Councilman Lathrop,
Well, I had, not on this question.
another one though.
Another
Okay.
one. I had a call from a lady that lives 16103 Allen Avenue, and she's worried about the dirt they're moving next door from
From Southview Commerce Center?
From North Point. And I said, well, she said they was draining a pond or something, and all that dirt they got stacked up there is coming down. She's afraid it's coming down in the creek. And I drove by there after she called. Didn't talk to her, but I looked, and I couldn't see anything wide, but a big berm behind them there, and I wouldn't know what to be looking at to see if it's coming out or not. So I just thought maybe it'd be something that we could look at, because she's afraid that creek would stop up and then it would flood her house.
Okay.
We've, drive by that Carolyn, Alexa, Councilwoman Peak, we drive that almost every day or every other day, especially to check, and staff does, to check that they have their silt screens up. I think one of the problems that I've seen over on Allen's 162nd Street, where it comes right out of that field and it's just been plowed. A lot of that dirt's coming out of those plowed fields that comes across 162nd Street, and it goes to the same place.
Well, I didn't know where it was supposed to go.
If you drive down Allen and then you look back to the west, whichever direction you're going, it doesn't matter. Look
I
back
went both
west.
ways.
You can see they've got the silt screens up, and I know
Still
staff
nice.
is,
Doesn't matter which way you
they
go.
talk about it all the time. They check on silts everywhere, and we've got a lot of them out there, silt screens.
And the other thing she had was, she called me at about 7:30. She said they started work at 7 o'clock and it was real noisy. And when I got out there at right after lunch, there was no noise anywhere there that I could find. And I drove up to the other end and went down that street that goes down the north, well, whatever the upside of it is. And the only thing I could hear was a lawnmower. So it was gone by noon, whatever noise was out there.
We talked about that last night at Planning and Zoning, Dave, didn't we, about noise? Is there any way we can make those big things less noisier?
No, sir.
Thank you. No, that was exactly the reason I asked that question.
But that was the two complaints that,
Yeah. Yeah, and it is, and by ordinance, we can't go by, how early? Is it 7 o'clock or daybreak or?
It's 7 is my understanding.
well, that's about what time she said it started.
Probably right.
They get paid by the hour, so they better be starting right at 7.
They're moving a lot of dirt out there.
Yes,
It's
they
pretty
are.
incredible. Okay, so we have addressed that then. Okay. Any other questions? Any other new business? Okay. Motion to enter executive session, discuss matters pertaining to the leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate according to Missouri State Statute 610-0212, and matters pertaining to legal actions according to Missouri State Statute 610-0211, and the record be closed, and the meeting adjourned from there.
Present.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none.
Councilman Trutzel,
Aye.
Councilman Finn,
Aye.
Councilman Van Winkle,
Aye.
Councilman Savage,
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak, Councilwoman Davidson, Councilman Clark, Councilman Lathrop,
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye, and we're adjourned, and thank you.